Ladies and gents, it's Tuesday, and what a Tuesday it is if you're over 66. As the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is pretending he's in a position to cut 2.4 billion from the Treasury to give pensioners a tax cut. I mean, I didn't even realise that we tax pensions. That seems a bit weird, bit roundabout. Because then we complain about the cost of state benefits, don't we? But wouldn't it just be easier to lower the amount that you give them ahead of time rather than giving them a larger amount and then trying to claw it back? But yes, on the front page of the FT, the Sun and the Express this morning, as far as the eye can see or grimace, it's voter bait for pensioners. Now, I would say I'm sure the oldies will see this for what it is, which is, what, desperate, cynical pantomime just before a general election, you know, where the trailing party are clumsily, irresponsibly e-jacking anything they can out into the journo-political sphere to see what sticks in a bid to, you know, shore up a few safe seats. I mean, that much is just obvious to people like you and me. Firstly, because it was only a few weeks ago that Downing Street was saying it's difficult to foresee any tax cuts anytime soon because the UK's finances are in such a perilous state. And now what? Now just before an election, it's like, oh yeah, we should slash inheritance tax. We should hike pensions. But secondly, and you know, perhaps more immediately, because although they're committing to giving your gran or granddad up to £2,000 a year increase to their pensions, they are still quietly acknowledging the full benefits of the plan wouldn't be expected to be felt until 2029. That's a full 5 years from now. And if we really need that spelling out for you, what that means is that Rishi Sunak and CCHQ, they sat down in a room, and after their traditional demonic seance, but before the sacrificial burning of a pother to the opulence gods, they've strategized that they will go to market offering pensioners a tax cut, but they're going to timescale it so that in the unlikely event that they do win this upcoming general election, they wouldn't be expected to deliver on it until after the next one. It is, in essence, Rishi Sunak committing to spending money that Rishi Sunak has warned he doesn't have. And also the new upcoming occupants of Downing Street will have to look stingy and mean-spirited. I mean, really, what is this like? This is like your dad being like, hey, kids! Oi! Who wants to go to Disneyland? And the kids are all like, me, Dad, Daddy, we all want to go to Disneyland. And then he's like, well, okay, all right. Well, go and ask your mother then. Because I would take you if I was still allowed in the family home, but since she kicked me, I'm not in charge of the family finances anymore. I would love to take you. But yeah, go and ask your mother. And of course, the kids would just take that, wouldn't they? Hook, line, and sinker. Run off to their mum, and then when she says no, and the reason you can't go to Disneyland is because your father sent us into mortgage arrears, blowing all of our money on cocaine and prostitutes. You know, maybe the kids don't want to hear those hard truths. Maybe they burst into tears. They're like, no, I don't believe that. They run away sobbing and screaming that they hate her. But that's because they would be children, right? They're only children. They haven't fully mentally developed yet. But pensioners have, guys. Pensioners are of sound mind, in theory. So yeah, I'm sure they'll have the faculties to discern realities, and they won't just blindly believe this.
Prince Andrew's a nonce burger.
Over to the Mail now, who become the latest conduit for Conservative cretiny by publicly soiling themselves over private school fees. Now this is never not funny. This is an endless source of comedic fuel for me. You know, you've got a newspaper that offshores its profits. It's owned by a non-dom billionaire. They ideologically hate public services. They contribute basically nothing. The Daily Mail, the Mail Group, and its owner, Lord Rothermere, all of that ecosystem, they represent the interests of the super rich. But again and again, we've got stuff like this coming out, feigning concern for what might happen to state schools if private school parents are forced to take tough decisions and pull their kids out and put them back into state schools again. So when you read headlines like this, please just remember that private schools are privilege factories. That is all they are. That is all any of this is. Millionaire or billionaire institutions who don't want to have to pay VAT. That's all it is. I mean, basically, here is the deal with private schools. You pay £30,000 a year for 6 years to get your child into the upper tiers of the well-connected. And then they stand a greater chance of being able to go on to Cambridge or Oxford. And from there on, they go into They go into the city or politics or journalism. They become the Boris Johnsons, the Michael Goves, the Oliver Dowdens, the Nick Robinsons. Private schools are a conveyor belt for the rich and powerful to put their sons and daughters on to ensure that they go on to be rich and powerful. And you pay 30 grand a year for a ticket for it. And yet here we are, day after day, with this laughable narrative that, the Mail care about what happens to state schools as a result of the VAT landing on private school fees? Like, I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys this, but VAT is supposed to be applied to luxury items. And what could be more luxury than paying 30 grand a year for each of your children to go to an elite tier education that goes levels deep in ensuring that they continue into the next life of elitism and luxury? Oh, but can state schools handle this though? Oh, now you care about state schools. Really? Honestly, I hope the first day little Tarquin sets foot in South London High, they call him a briefcase wanker and the rat concrete wall caves in. Or how about this piece from the Sunday Telegraph? First private school closes ahead of Labour's VAT changes. That story is demonstrable rubbish, by the way. Or this utter bollocks. Honestly, it's like every day now, isn't it? There's tweets, there's columns, there's segments that people feign concern for a state school system that until now they've shown absolutely zero interest in. Oh my God, isn't it terrible? 40% of private school parents are considering taking their children out. No, it isn't. This isn't an attack on the super rich, eh? This is an attack on aspiration, on middle-class parents who just want the best for their kids. What a crock of shit. Let me tell you something, right? Me, my girlfriend, our children, we live in what many would constitute to be a middle-class lifestyle, right? I have what you would consider to be a middle-class day job. And I can tell you now, like, this whole idea of, like, middle-class people send their kids to private schools is utter lunacy. We couldn't hope to afford 30 grand a year extra to push them into private schools. Are you joking? Who's got an extra 30 grand a year floating around? Honestly, the whole idea that we're supposed to feel sorry for people who, until now, have ostensibly been tax dodging and who are buying further privilege, who hate state schools anyway, on the basis it's hitting middle-class families when actually blowing 30 grand a year on each of your children, that is truly top 2% elitism. Is as illustrative an example as you could wish for in terms of seeing a detached and dying Conservative Party and their cheerleaders who have completely lost touch with the general public. Like, we're worried about our mortgages, rents, and energy bills. We're worried about the cost of food and just existing. Meanwhile, this lot are banging on about private school fees and inheritance tax. And you know what you should do every time you see someone like this complaining about this sort of stuff? You should copy and paste these articles from back when you were crying about your mortgage and the prospect that you might lose your house. And when they're like, this is an attack on aspiration. Why don't Labour or their voters care about my fees jumping? You should paste this. Hold your nerve. And I'm sorry, but the state can't solve all your problems.